Why do we like to fish? Whether you yourself are interested in fishing or not, it's hard to deny that fishing is a popular pastime for many people around the world. From that first tug, to the hook set,
Fish on!
to the fight that follows after.
Fish off.
The adrenaline that comes with landing a fish is unmatched. Angling has touched the hearts of many outdoorsmen and non-outdoorsmen alike. For many, it's a way of getting outside and appreciating the natural systems around them. For others, it's nostalgia, recalling the times you went out with your dad or your grandfather as a kid. And for many, it's a necessary source of food required to feed or provide for their families. For whatever reason people may fish, there's no doubt that fishing is an enormous part of human culture. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Sean Simmons. He is the founder and president of Anglers Atlas and MyCatch, a website and mobile app dedicated to sport fishing and citizen science. He is the president of Goldstream Publishing Incorporated and is the president of the Washington, British Columbia chapter of the American Fisheries Society. With that being said, let's get right into the conversation. My name is Michael Bryden, and you're listening to Wilder Insights. Well, I just want to start by saying, Sean, thanks for joining me here today.
Thanks. Mike or Michael?
Either or.
Either's good?
Yeah, either's fine. I'll have you start by introducing yourself and what it is exactly you do.
Yeah, so I run the Anglers Atlas website, and part of that is the MyCatch fishing app where anglers report their catches. So that's kind of a starting point. How far do you want me to go along? Do you want me to sort of explain how I got into this, or?
Yeah, we can stop right to that. Like, how did you get into this field altogether?
Sure. Well, I'm a graduate from UNBC. I was the first wave of graduate students up here. 1994, came up here fresh, not knowing anything about northern British Columbia, and I had a ready-made project at a local lake that went through a big fish kill the previous year called Tabor Lake. And one of the really interesting things about that project is that my supervisor, her name's Ellen Pettigrew, she's still a prof here, she said, well, if you're going to understand Tabor Lake, you need to understand all the regional lakes. And so I got to go down to the ministry office at that time, open file folders, and literally they were file folders. There was dust on them. I remember opening the files at that time. And there was amazing sources of data, detailed bathymetric maps on hundreds of lakes in northern British Columbia, stocking information, fish species presence information, access information. I thought, if you like fishing, this is a gold mine. So after I graduated, I started publishing free fishing maps, starting with just here, I think we started with 15 maps around northern British Columbia. And we did old school stuff like these things called magazines. They were big in the 20th century. But we also did things like PDFs, which were quite novel in the late 90s, and just putting them as downloadable PDFs so anglers could sign up to the website, download the maps, print them off, and take them out into the field. And that proved quite popular. The business model around that was advertising based, so I had some background in publishing, so we started publishing magazines and selling advertising both on the magazines, and we actually worked with newspapers as well, putting inserts within the newspapers, and also online. And so that's how we generate the revenue to support the business. And bit by bit, year over year, we'd add more lakes, build out the database to the point where we have now over, I'd say, at least 300,000 water bodies across North America cataloged. And this would be lakes, reservoirs, rivers, as well as ocean destinations like bays and sounds and those sorts of things. One of the interesting things we noticed as well is that when anglers are downloading the maps, they also like to share information. Certainly big fish, the picture of the big fish that you caught. Everyone loves that, the hero shots. But they also like sharing other types of information as well, like access points, maybe some warnings on water bodies. Some people like to share hot spots, but we generally try and shy away from that, keep secret spots secret. And the idea of having a background in science, in limnology, and a connection with the sport fishing market, it was about 2017 we thought, well, is there a way to really bridge those two worlds, to bring together the fisheries scientists who are managers, researchers, who have a lot of challenges, struggle with data. It's always data deficits. And anglers, of which there are millions, 4 million in Canada, I mean, there's 40 million in the U.S., can we find a way for them to contribute and address some of the challenges that fisheries scientists face? And so that's when the idea of MyCatch, the mobile app, emerged. And it was really just an angler log reporting tool where anglers would report their catches, but we'd get them doing it in a standardized way so that it could be used for fisheries research and management purposes. So maybe I'll pause at that point just because I think sort of we brought you up to sort of where we're at now.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never even thought of the MyCatch app in that instance, honestly. Like, it's kind of the iNaturalist for anglers, right? That's citizen science data going right to scientists. If I could back up a little bit, just about like the early days of MyCatch and Anglers Atlas, when it was PDFs on a website and a magazine, did you find trouble with that kind of information getting traction, like getting the word out there, or did it kind of just like shoot off right out the get-go?
Always trouble. There's nothing easy about this whole process, right? It didn't take off like you hear about these viral videos that'll take off and get millions of views. It was a slow, gradual process, and it's been sort of growing consistently every year. I mean, some years are stronger, some years are weaker. But I think the first year, and it was just a test. We did it in 1999. We put the first set of maps up, and it was just around Prince George. So it was just a test. I think we got about 250 people sign up. Not bad for a population of Prince George's size. So it was like, okay, well, we can get some people signing up. Monetizing it was always the challenge. How do you monetize that? But we were getting traction. And so the next year, I remember going down to the Abbotsford Boat and Sportsman show. We got a booth, and we said free fishing maps was the announcement. And that was, I think, year 2000. And it was amazing how many people would fill out, and this was old school, paper forms, memberships right there. Fill out, and they just had to have an email address, and then we'd sign them up, basically. And then I think we got about 1,500 people signed up from that fishing show. And that's when I started to see, okay, there's some traction. Then we basically went to 5,000. And then year after year, we started scaling to the point where we've now got about 1 million anglers a year who come to the website. We've got a membership base. Now, here's the thing. It's hard to say, people that signed up 20 years ago, are they still active? So I like to use who's on our active email list. So it's about 170,000 people on that active email list is probably the best representation of who's currently a member. And a much smaller percent actually report out catches. It's measured in tens of thousands. But that sort of gives you a sense of the scales that we're at now.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's definitely a lot of people. I can imagine at the beginning talk about a full email inbox. Jeez.
Yeah, totally.
So through the MyCatch app, you guys host tournaments and fishing derbies in general. Can you explain how maybe using the MyCatch app, how that's different from signing up for a tournament some other way?
Yeah, very much. And maybe I'll step back a little bit, just give you the evolution of the MyCatch app, because it was originally set up as angler log. Think of your traditional angler logs where you'd have actual books. Anglers would write down their stuff and then they'd submit them to agencies. That method of citizen science has been around for decades. Now we wanted to see if we could supercharge that with an app. And so if anglers are going out there, instead of reporting it in a notebook, report it on the app, and then they'll be able to track all their locations and be able to see what their history is, thinking that would be of interest. And since we had 1 million anglers and we had a strong email list, we thought we could get some pretty good traction. When we launched in 2018, we certainly got a lot. I think the first 4 months we got 4,000 water bodies across Canada cataloged with data on the state of their fishery. But the percent of user and uptake was not spectacular. It was less than 1%. And it was also inconsistent. Anglers would report on the things that they wanted to report on, not on the things that I needed to make sure we had enough data that was consistent, quality checked, all that sort of stuff. And so, we were building out that. And then COVID hit in 2020. And we had 2 strong tournament anglers on our team. And we thought, what if and here's the thing, across the country you could still fish, but tournaments were canceled.
Right.
And so we thought, well, what if we start running catch photo release tournaments? The idea is strong conservation message. So the fish aren't being harvested. The fish aren't even stuck in a live well for the day so that they're taken back to the live weigh station, which is typically how a lot of tournaments run today. So the idea is you catch the fish, you put it on a measuring board, take a picture. Ideally, in less than a minute, that fish is back in the water. And we can do things like video release as part of the app to make sure that that fish swam away on its own energy. So we'd have a useful measure called condition on discard that we could then measure and incorporate into the analysis. And so we thought there was a strong conservation message to this new way of doing tournaments. But in addition to that, and to your question, what's different from what we do to traditional tournaments? Traditional tournaments are mostly about the big fish, and it's about who's the best. Whereas our purpose of our events are really about how do we address key scientific research or management questions, and how the anglers can play a meaningful role in that conservation effort. So we'll structure the incentives, the rules, all based on whatever the experimental design is, and how to create incentives that give us the type of data we're after. Big fish, everyone wants to catch a big fish, so we'll usually have that competition, but we need full-length distributions. So we want all your fish caught. We need things like zeros, like how often do you go off and get skunked? So you put prizes for being skunked. Tough luck prizes, that sort of stuff. So it's all about creating incentive structures that align with the types of data and the experiment that you're trying to run. And so, for example, we've ran, where should I begin? Maybe I'll start with blotchy bass. That was the first continent-wide event we ran. It was with the U.S. Geological Survey and University of West Virginia. And the challenge they had is that they've discovered that black bass, so largemouth, smallmouth, and a bunch of the other species in southeast U.S., have a virus on the outside of them. It looks like an ink blot, and it just sort of covers either tail or body, or you can get it on the lip as well. And they recently discovered that it is a virus. And so this was just around the time of COVID, so virus attention was really at top of people's mind. And they were wondering, well, how often does this occur? Where does it occur? Is there a seasonal variation to this? And if you were to conduct a traditional fisheries science research project to do this, to do it across North America would probably cost you, well, certainly well in the millions, probably tens of millions of dollars to do, because you need to get survey crews out, you need to get them lined up, there's all sorts of expenses that are associated with this. This is where the opportunity of citizen science comes in, is that if you can recruit enough anglers to participate, you can collect that data voluntarily. And by providing prize incentives to get the type of data you're after, and it also allows you to control the type of data, making sure you're getting the right type of data come in. You can do it for far less, and you can engage the anglers as a meaningful partner in citizen science in the management of the fishery. And so it serves also as an educational tool that gives them awareness about what's going on in their environment from a fishery science perspective. So that was the largest one we've run. It was for a full year, continent-wide. Actually, it was a year and a half because we did it twice. And we got data from southern Texas to northern Ontario, from the east coast of Canada all the way out to BC, although there was definitely a noticeable gap on the Rocky Mountains and eastern prairies section of Canada and the U.S. There's not a lot of bass fishing there. And we didn't really see a lot of prevalence in BC and Washington. In fact, it was really tough to say if it even occurs at all in the western extreme. But certainly from Texas, the furthest north where we had really strong confirmation from the photograph of blotchy bass, I think it was up New Liskeard. I think that's the furthest north in Ontario. For folks who know Ontario, that's basically, I think, as far as we certainly saw it in Lake Nipissing.
Mm-hmm. That's such a beautiful system, because I feel like people want to be out fishing regardless, right? Like, fishing tournaments are just a fun way to get involved in the community at all. So going out there and setting these boundaries to get the data that you want to get, like, people just get involved. For those who are looking for this data or want to go out there and like collect this certain specific data that they're looking for, where can they find that? Or do they have to reach out to Anglers Atlas and just kind of set the parameters themselves?
Yeah, the data is always tricky, because to build trust with anglers, we have to promise them that their secret spots stay secret.
Of course.
So we do not release exact latitude and longitude, otherwise we wouldn't have participation. However, from a research perspective and a science and management perspective, we kind of need that data. So it's figuring out what that balance points looks like. So we don't just release the data public. That's not on. We will release parts of the data publicly. Things that won't, and here's a rule of thumb. If you can reverse engineer a location from what we release, we've released too much. That's the rule of thumb. And generally where we fall on with most anglers, at least the anglers that are participating are cool with, is we can release water body level data. So let's say you're fishing Stewart Lake. So we'll say this fish was caught in Stewart Lake. Good luck finding that.
Yeah.
The smaller water bodies, it's still a little bit touch and go how small we'll go down to, because at the really small ones, if you release the water body, you pretty much release the location. So that's kind of where we walk some fine lines. Rivers, we can, good luck finding the location on the Fraser River. Even in those cases, we might break it down to sections of river. But the goal here is making sure you can't reverse engineer a location, because that's really important from the angler's perspective. However, it has to be of high enough resolution that it helps the researchers. Now, in some cases, researchers really want that high resolution, detailed latitude, longitude. In those cases, we sign a data sharing agreement with the researcher saying you can have this, but you cannot release it. You have to generalize it using the same rules that we do, that it has to be at a scale large enough you can't reverse engineer the location, that sort of thing. And most of the researchers are cool with that, and that's acceptable. And it also fits with conservation, because let's say you've got a sweet bull trout pool, and you release the location of that pool, it's not a sweet pool very much longer,
exactly,
right? Because people will go fish it out. So that's kind of that conservation part fitting into what we release from a data perspective and what we keep private and secure.
Right on. I want to talk about the future generation of anglers, like all these kids nowadays who want to get into fishing. So fishing in general is a super good way to just get involved with the outdoors, learn patience, learn discipline. How important do you think it is for children to get involved with fishing?
Oh, 100%. And the more we can do to get kids connected, it connects them to so much. First of all, it's ironic that we use the phone to get them into nature.
Yeah.
Because right now, getting them off the phone is a challenge. This is an opportunity to use the phone to get them into the nature. And the sooner we can get them involved with fishing, the sooner we can connect them with the physical environment, with firsthand experience of what it's being able to see and understand how a fish lives. Because in order to catch a fish, you have to have some sense of what the fish's environment's about. So even from a non-scholastic perspective, you're learning as you're on the water. You're learning how to set a hook. You're learning how to bring the fish up. You're learning what they bite on, what they don't. So you just by the practice, you're learning about fisheries and the environment. It also is an amazing opportunity to build relationships between generations. I mean, I love the social integrations between the people that are learning to fish and the people who will share their fishing stories with them. So it's a really good intergenerational opportunity as well. So there's so many valuable things you can enrich a young person's life with by bringing them fishing.
Exactly, and they learn how to be a good outdoorsman, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Speaking of that, can you think of any ways that an angler can have a better relationship with the land, like maybe help to improve the health of the lakes that they visit?
Oh, 100%. Sign up to My Catch and start reporting your catches.
There we go.
Yeah, and another thing is we view these as relationships. I know that often I'm thinking, oh, look at the data, it's awesome, because I'm a science geek. I love that stuff. But I know that in order to sustain something like this, it has to be two ways. So not only do we take from the anglers, we have to make sure we're giving. So what are we giving back? Well, certainly recognition. We want to say thanks, for one. That's a real easy thing to do. But are there other things? Like, are there data sets? So one of the things we've started doing this year is for our events. So we ran a series of events across the Midwest called the Midwest Walleye Challenge. It was with 12 state agencies and 2 provinces to help better track walleye populations across the Midwest. And as we went through the project this last year, at the wrap-up last fall, we wanted to do discovery with our anglers. So the ones that were interested, we reached out to them and said, can you jump on a call? We just want to learn what your experience was like. How did it go for you? Is there anything you'd like to see differently? Just so we get a better sense of what it was like for them. Because I live in Prince George. We don't have walleye up here. I'm not really familiar with that fishery. I've caught them, but I don't know it intimately. So I wanted to get a much better sense of how our anglers perceive this. And when we were talking to them, we realized they're really curious about the data and really interested in the citizen science side of it. So what can we do? Well, we've got enormous amounts of data. We can't give them the exact location, but we can provide them the same type of data that we provide our agency partners, which is aggregated data to the water body level. So we were able to provide them. We do custom posters. If somebody spends half an hour on the phone with me, I want to send them a poster, a custom poster for them. Are there other ways we can build that relationship? And creating that two-way exchange, that feedback mechanism is sort of central to citizen science and sort of this new field of fisheries science is making sure that it's not just take. You've got to be able to give back to the anglers as well. So that's one of the key things that we're still learning on this. We're still trying to figure out the best way to develop this. It's still a relatively new field.
With all the lakes and data that you guys cover, you guys are all over North America, right? Do you have staff all over the country?
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because we can do this remotely. So there was a time, like back when we were publishing magazines, we had most everybody concentrated in the office here. The office here now is just me, and Jamie shows up occasionally. Everybody works remotely, and we just have daily check-ins, daily scrums. Super easy. We just call into a Google Meets. What'd you do yesterday? What are you doing today? Any major obstacles? And then we'll have custom meetings for very specific topics as we're going. We find that remote strategy works really well for us and allows us to scale in places we never imagined before. So we've got folks in Ontario, folks in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, British Columbia, a couple folks down in the U.S. as well. Most of our research work actually takes place in the U.S. It's funny. I'm based here in Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. We have almost no work in Canada. But it is what it is. So
yeah, that's just the future of this board, right?
Yeah, well, if that's where the work is, you'll go to the work. Like we did a really cool proposal recently, and I don't know if we'll get it, especially with what's happening right now with the federal agencies in the U.S., but it was a really interesting research project in the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. Still not quite sure how best to call it at this stage. But it's to go really get a better sense of total catch of red snapper and grouper, so reef species, and what's their condition on discard. A huge challenge for NOAA fisheries and a lot of the state agencies is when they open up the red snapper fishery. So red snapper is a very popular fishery, and it's had some issues in the past. But the problem is they don't have a good grasp on the numbers of total harvest, and they don't know of when you release a red snapper, they've got a closed swim bladder, so they'll suffer from barotrauma. So they don't know when they release the red snapper how many are surviving or what the condition on discard is. So what we're doing is we got a partnership with, or the proposal brought together the state of Texas, Texas Parks and Wildlife, Matt Strike's lab at Texas A&M, the Coastal Conservation Association, which is the leading angler group down there, plus Return 'em Right, the American Fisheries Society, and us, to really run a 2-year project to see, can we get using a new method called capture recapture. I don't know, you've backgrounds in fisheries, right? So you know mark recapture, right?
Yep. Let me interject right there. For those who might be unfamiliar, mark recapture is an ecological method used by scientists to estimate population size. It's done by capturing an animal, either physically or on camera, marking it, and releasing it back into the wild. A portion of a population will be marked and released. Upon recapture, the number of individuals who are already marked is compared with those who are unmarked. After some fancy calculations, a population estimate is determined. For the example you're about to hear Sean talk about, although I can't say for sure, it's likely that the fish are either marked by clipping a fin, inserting a pit tag, which is a tag that's inserted underneath the skin via a needle, or a combination of the two. Alright, back to Sean.
So think mark recapture, but think of it from a perspective of the anglers and what they catch. So when an angler reports their catch on the app, that's a mark. You have creel surveys on the ground at boat launches intercepting anglers to do their normal creel work. They ask an extra question. Did you report this on the app? Actually, 2 extra. Did you report all your catches? Once they've got that, if they said yes, there's your recapture. You can apply a mark recapture methodology. That allows you to estimate totals without ever having to go to do the effort portion of when you're doing a full assessment of total harvest, you need effort. That's a huge challenge to get that effort. This mark recapture allows you to bypass that simply so long as one of your methods is randomized. So it's a really cool and innovative. We're doing actually that. We're doing some tests of that as well currently in Oregon and California, with 3 lakes in California, 3 rivers in Oregon. In fact, I'll be presenting some preliminary results of that at the AFS conference next week in Vancouver. So some really cool stuff you can do with this method, and really addressing some of the key management challenges that are out there.
That's so interesting. About the red snapper, that being a saltwater species, how do you determine boundaries for that population that you're checking mark and recapture for?
Oh, you just set it in the GPS. So our system runs a fully an industrial strength geospatial database. So basically, we just set the boundaries. A polygon, the lat long. Basically, you use the lat longs. You build a boundary. Yeah. And you say this is where you're going to catch fish. And so as the data comes in, if it's within the boundary, it counts. If it's out of the boundary, it doesn't.
Oh, that makes sense. Right on. So I know your position since starting your own business and having this unique app and interface. It's pretty unique. But if you could give any advice to somebody wanting to do what you do or something similar to what you do, what would that be?
I would say read 2 authors. Well, one author for sure, Eric Ries, and the book is The Lean Startup. And it is really about how you go about thinking about entrepreneurial ventures. So the key is understanding, well, I'd say the starting point, what pain are you solving? Know that pain. A lot of entrepreneurs will have ideas on what they think is cool. The first lesson Eric Ries and his mentor Steve Blank say, get out of the building, get in front of your customers, confirm that, because you're often way off. But it's that feedback mechanism, like I was talking about with our anglers, that feedback mechanism where you get good. And it's not the first thing you do that's going to succeed. It's the 10th thing. So the key is you got to rapidly iterate, and you will get better with each iteration. And really focus on the pain. One of the best strategies or the best analogies I can come up with is, think of a dentist. You've been to a dentist where they have that long probe device. I think it's called a probe.
Only once, yeah.
Yeah, and they'll poke each tooth, and they'll ask you, does this hurt? And you'll say no. And then they'll poke the next tooth. And does this hurt? No. And they'll poke the next tooth and say, does this hurt? And you'll say, oh yeah, that a little bit. And then they say, a little bit of pain. Okay. And they start digging around that pain. And how about when I do this? And then you're like convulsing in the chair, and you're saying, yeah, that really, really hurts. Think about that as being what you're trying to solve. When you can identify that pain and you can really clarify exactly what the nature of that pain is, that's how you build your business model. Because people will pay to have their pain solved.
Right. That was an amazing answer. Thank you. I just have one final question for you. On the Anglers Atlas website, in the About section, with all the work you do at this company, it jokes that sometimes you still get to go out and go fishing. Do you still get to go fishing? Yeah,
I was out 2 weeks ago on Lake Winnipeg. I caught my second greenback. So beautiful walleye. So I did get some walleye fishing in there.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
but
decent.
Yeah, last year I think I only got out 3 times. Although last year it was good. So I got on Lake Winnipeg twice because my wife's got a place back in Winnipeg. So I'm going back and forth from there. And also got in Hawaii at the National AFS conference last fall and caught my first mahi-mahi. So that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. Will you be fishing at the conference this year?
100%. Yeah. We've got the last day a sturgeon citizen science trip. So it's part of the Fraser River Sturgeon Conservation Society. They've been doing citizen science on the Fraser River with sturgeon for over 20 years. They have a super tight population estimate because of the work that the anglers have helped on for sturgeon on the Fraser. And so we're going out on the Friday after the conference ends, and I think there's about 25 of us, so about 24. We'll be on boats. BC Sport Fishing guides are hosting us, and they're going to be taking us out fishing and then walking us through how they do their citizen science. So once the sturgeon comes in, there'll be a sling, so it keeps them wet. And basically you do length measurements, girth measurements, and then they scan for a pit tag. If there is one, they identify the number, so it's a recapture. If there isn't, they'll add a pit tag in, and they'll release that sturgeon. So it's a really cool way to demonstrate the citizen science while also getting to go out fishing. Yeah,
that sounds like a lot of fun. Do you have a favorite species to fish for?
Well, sturgeon are kind of my favorite because they're just beautiful animals, and like they're prehistoric, the dinosaurs, and they've got these little tiny eyes, and they look so calm when you're in the water. But when we've released them in the water, you realize the power power, they're just all muscle. That tail kicks and you feel like you get knocked over.
Yeah, they're like a freshwater shark almost, but far friendlier.
Yeah, yeah, and such a neat species and such a fascinating life history too.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the questions I have today. Thank you, Sean, for talking to me.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you to tuning in for my conversation with Sean Simmons. I hope you enjoyed the show. I want to thank the C4 radio station located in Prince George, British Columbia, for allowing me to use their facilities to record. And an additional thank you to the band Funeral Culture for providing me with the song you're listening to right now. Check them out. If you're interested in becoming a guest on the show, know somebody you think should be a guest, or want to share a conservation story of your own, email wilderinsightspodcast@gmail.com or DM me at wilderinsightspod on Instagram. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.